With Week 11 slated to possibly have some serious implications on the college football playoff selection committee, there were several games on the slate for Week 11 that proved to be very costly and very rewarding for quite a few teams. Would the Indiana Hoosiers and the BYU Cougars remain unbeaten? Would Army continue to climb up the rankings? And would Deion continue to impress pollsters? And would someone in the top 5 take a tumble? Find out the answer to these questions and a whole lot more on Gridiron Gab Triple Option. Welcome back, Gabbers. Thank you all so much for being with us here on another edition of Gridiron Gab Triple Option. I am, of course, Mr. CeeLo here, joining you as always for another edition of 2GTO. And as always, you know I got to say what's up to my man Brad. Guys, listen, y'all got to jump in on the show. I love my man Brad, but listen, you guys have got to jump in on the show. The whole point of this is a conversation. It's not always about two people having a conversation. Please jump in there and let's have this conversation, because when the upset of the week happened, ladies and gentlemen, well, I wouldn't even call it the upset. I think it was probably more like the surprise of the week. But you guys go to that show. It's the earliest mark. It says Ole Miss upsets Dogs in Oxford. So we're not going to really go over that game. We'll go over some sentiments of that game, but for the most part, if you want to see my full critique on the Ole Miss Georgia game, go to that show. As always, Brad had comments on it. I agree with you. Run the ball on, not up the middle all the time. Of course, he tells me what's up. No worries. Have a great day. Appreciate you, brother. You have a great day as well. Austin was better than Dart. Yeah, I agree. Simmons was great. This kid is going to be a star. And he says, enjoy it while you can. I will. I most certainly will enjoy it. Yep, you knew it was coming.
It's not funny, Ed. Hey, shut up!
I know Indy still rocks. We're going to rock all the way to the playoff, baby.
Run, run, run.
You my boy. You my boy. Guys, this is the kind of feedback I want to get from all of you. Listen, I will tease you as much as I can, but I want this to be interactive, because I know you guys watch a whole bunch of shows where the interaction is just absolutely atrocious. And then you get guys that absolutely don't know what they're talking about when they talk about college football landscape. But let's get into it, you guys. Let's knock off week number 11. Because we got a busy week number 12 coming up this week too, and I will go through that with you as soon as I possibly can. Hopefully it'll be sooner than Friday night, Saturday morning, shall we? But let's move on. The first game features the number 25. As you guys notice, I go from the bottom to the top. I'm trying to get to the point where I can go from most important or most entertaining. But you'll see I'm going to fly through some of these, because some of these were just games. I mean, yeah, they weren't even matchups. But number 25, Army, 14, North Texas, 3. And guys, let me tell you something about this game. Look, this by far was not a football game that the Army Black Knights dominated by any stroke of the imagination. Now, the reason why I'm going to talk about this game is because you're going to find out where Army went in the polls. And to say the least, don't get me wrong, North Texas was in their building. But when you look at this game in so many different avenues, you're going to say, how did North Texas lose this football game? Now, I will say this. North Texas had a major advantage. Now, yardage-wise, it was 308 to 283 in favor of Army. But the Mean Green had over 114 yards passing to just 15 yards passing for the Army Black Knights. Now, here's the flip side. Army had 293 yards on the ground, whereas North Texas had 69. The turnover battle was 2-2, but look at the time of possession. 42 minutes to 18:15. Now, most of you are going to ask, okay, well, Mr. CeeLo, North Texas didn't CeeLo's formula for the upset. What do I mean? Well, when you look at this game, I want you guys to pay close attention. You had North Texas started this game off with a field goal. They drove it down the field, you guys, and they did it quickly. They ended up only shooting. Well, they didn't do it necessarily quickly, but they had an 18-play, 62-yard drive that lasted almost 7 minutes. Chewed up 7 minutes, and all they got was a field goal. Then you see Army proceed to have a 9-play, 5-minute, almost 6-minute drive to reclaim the lead. And then you see North Texas get the ball all the way down to the Army 1. And basically turned it over on downs. That's one. Then you see the Black Knights go 46 yards and punt. And then you see the North Texas Mean Green go for it on 4th down inside their own inside their own 45-yard line, and they don't get it. Now, I understand exactly why you do this, because ultimately you understand that you have an Army offense that's limited as far as throwing the football. So, as we talked about, the Army Black Knights are unable to convert anything out of that turnover on downs. So we go in at half 7-3, and then on the first drive of the second half, the Mean Green get a turnover. And they are able to start at their own 46, but they get nothing. They start basically at midfield, and they're able to not get a thing. And then what ultimately ended up costing them the game, on the very next drive, the Army Black Knights chew up 14 minutes. 14-minute, 21-play drive, 94 yards for a touchdown. And this basically took us all the way to the 11-minute, inside the 12-minute mark of the fourth quarter. So you're talking about being down 14-3 with just a shade under 12 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Look, that had to be one of the most gut-punching type drives you could ever see. Just running the ball. See, this is why I tell SEC fans, you don't want to play with the midshipmen or the Black Knights, because it's like 3 here, 3 here. Let me go down this drive for you guys. Let me go down. Do you know how many for 94 yards, 21 plays? Let's see. 5-yard run, 3-yard run, 5-yard run, 3, 2. There was a pass in here, 7, 8, 17, 2, 3, 1. There's a 4th down in here. 4 yards. 7, 10. They even had a point where they had a holding in here that would have given them back the football had they been able to stop them. But they ended up having a 7-yard, 10-yard, and a 4-yard, and that was first down. They got 20 back on 21, and they needed 20 in 3 plays. Then you go from 3, 1, 3, 2, which was a touchdown. That wasn't it. After they gave up 21 plays in almost 14 minutes, you guys, then they throw the interception. And here's the sad part about this. They were inside the Army 20.
Run.
Army then puts the ball on the ground with about 8 minutes left. With about 4 minutes left. And then the Mean Green drive all the way inside the 2-yard line again. And then there's another interception in the red zone.
Damn you!
So the Mean Green had their opportunities. So am I going to say that this Army Black Knights team is unbeatable? No, but when you can run 21 plays and chew up nearly 14 minutes of clock, that takes your heart. You're sitting over there almost the entirety of a quarter. Oh, yeah. And then the worst part is it leads all the way into the fourth quarter. But North Texas had their opportunities. No doubt. But Army goes to 9-0 with their 14-3 victory in Denton. Number 24, Missouri 30, Oklahoma 23. Now, this was a game that both teams couldn't decide who wanted to win it. As Oklahoma had its share of hiccups and Missouri definitely had its share. And I've said this, many of you have heard me say this, I'm not a fan of Missouri. Why they're still ranked? Somebody likes them that doesn't know college football, because I'm not a fan of them. I don't think they're that good. I don't understand. But let us always go and take a look and see if Oklahoma even had an opportunity. Because looking here, you look at taking Mr. CeeLo's formula for the upset. It didn't really favor Missouri. Favor Oklahoma. I get it. When you look at it, you got 4 turnovers. And you didn't have the football. All I can say is this should have been a blowout, Oklahoma. This is why Missouri should not be in the top 25 conversation. You're looking at a football team in the Missouri Tigers who got 4 turnovers, didn't turn the ball over once, and you needed a scoop and score with 30 seconds left in this game to win it. That what you needed.
It's official. You suck.
That what you needed. Oh, excuse me, it was 4-1. Excuse me, I'm sorry. But, however, of those 4 turnovers, guys, you also have to look at the fact that they also scored on a scoop and score. So, in retrospect, there was a lot of situations that could have went differently. What's funny is, as soon as Oklahoma went ahead on that scoop and score, well, technically, Oklahoma scored 2 touchdowns within a minute and 20 seconds. They scored on a 12-play, 75-yard drive that took 5:29, and then on the very next drive, 3 plays in, Oklahoma gets a scoop and score for a touchdown that gives them the lead. And then we see Missouri come back and just run down the field with Drew Pine. Surprisingly enough, the former Notre Dame quarterback drives them all the way down the field. And I guess you could say shows a little bit of that, what he learned at South Bend. And they're able to get in with $1:03 left on the clock. And then as soon as Oklahoma gets it back, and then they get an interference call on the next drive, get a run, and then there's a fumble at the 17. Scoop and score. So, like I said, I'm not sold on Missouri. I'm just not. They haven't shown me enough. And as I said, Oklahoma's still trying to get it figured out. And when you're struggling against a football team that is still trying to get it figured out with all the players that they have on that are hurt, you're not. Yeah, this is not a top 25 football team. I don't care if they're 7-2 or not. And people will say, well, they get it done. Well, not supposed to just get it done at home. Drew Pine was 14-27, 143, 3 touchdowns. He did take care of the football. And as we alluded to, that drive that got them the victory. Also, there were several turnover on downs by the Oklahoma Sooners. We saw Jackson Arnold 15-24, 74 yards, just not doing it. He just really is not. Missouri's Luther Burden III has really been silent, but a lot of it has to do with the fact that his quarterback play has been suspect, and really nobody else stood out if you really want to look at it from that standpoint. There were a lot of fumbles all over the place, and you look at Arnold lost 2 fumbles on the day. He had 3 total. As a team, Oklahoma lost 4 fumbles. Deion Burks got 1 taken. Peyton Bowen got 1 taken from him. So, when you really start to look at where this team is going, there's a lot of problems here. You're going to have to... I don't know if Brent Venables can withstand this if you're an Oklahoma fan. This team is not showing progress, and I know what people are going to say. You can't change the fact that Dylan Gabriel transferred. I get that. But the reality is the reality, and Oklahoma's going to have to get some serious changes made. I'm not saying that they need to change coaches, but they're going to have to get some serious change, whether it's recruiting or personnel within the front office and the coaching staff. But number 24, Missouri 30. Oklahoma falls to 5-5. Number 23, Clemson 24. Virginia Tech 14. Now, this was another one of these games, guys, that this score does not reflect how close this game was. Because when we watched this, Virginia Tech blocked the kick, had a fumble. Clemson had an interception, turnover on downs, a block kick, and then this was where Virginia Tech was. But I did say when we checked this game out, Virginia Tech could play some defense. The question is, can they score points? And they were able to go in at the half up 7-0 with this offense for Clemson just looking absolutely atrocious. I mean, it was just absolutely horrible. And needless to say, if they had made that field goal at the end of the half, I believe this would have changed the course of the game. I really do. Because when you check out the second half, Clemson came out and went 60 yards down the field in less than 4 minutes, and they scored a touchdown. And then you get a 3-and-out by the Virginia Tech Hokies, and then they proceed to score on 3 plays, 44 yards, and a $130. And when that happens, look, you're not going to beat a Clemson team that is pretty much out-muscling you and out-flanking you in all ways that you haven't seen in a while, because Virginia Tech's program is not where it once was during the Vic glory days. And you could get nothing done. And then you have coupled with the interception that you had driving down the field and getting deep into Clemson territory. And that leads to the 10-play, 93-yard drive that really sealed Virginia Tech's fate. Because on the very next drive, you turn the ball over on downs, and then you have another interception, and then which allows Clemson to pick up an extra field goal, and then you go down and get a pretty much a desperate 7 points to kind of cosmetic the score a little bit, and there you go. To me, it was more about Clemson scoring when they had to, and Virginia Tech not being able to counterbalance that energy. Let's take a look at Mr. CeeLo's formula for the upset. As you see, first downs, Clemson 20, Virginia Tech 15, total yards, 150 more from the Clemson side. And then you see 167 rush yards to 40 for Virginia Tech. Then the turnover battle, not even close. But yet Virginia Tech was still in this game. Time of possession, Clemson outdid them by 14 minutes. Still, they're in this football game. Ultimately, the way I saw it, Virginia Tech has got to get the issue established under center. They were unable to run the football against that much bigger offensive line. That was pretty obvious. Coming in, Virginia Tech was hoping they could move Clemson around. I thought they did a good job really setting things up, especially playing defensively. Trying to play field position and whatnot, not trying to do too much. But then there were times they did do too much, and it cost them. They couldn't stop Phil Maffa. He had 128 yards on 26 carries. Klubnik also was 16 of 34, 3 touchdowns and an interception. And considering, as I said, as many turnovers as this team had, we also got to see Colin Schley along with Kyron Drones. They both threw 37 total passes, which I thought was a little bit too much. But I know what people are going to say. Listen, they couldn't get anything going offensively, so you got to try something. Agreed. But ultimately, you can't get so out there that you forget that you still need, your strength is still, you've got to run the football. You don't want to turn the football over. You want to make good plays. You want to make good decisions. And like I said, I look at the Tigers trying to get the ball to Daquan Felton, the 6'5" wide receiver, which was a good choice. He had 6 grabs for 68 yards and a 30-yarder. Ali Jennings had a 22-yarder, and I think ultimately that's what you want to do. You want to try to throw these back shoulder fades, and I think based on what the receivers they have, you want to do that when you've got big wide receivers, including tight end Benji Gosnell. You know that, to me, you've got to run better play designs. That's just what I believe. If you're going to have these big wide receivers, you need to be able to run more specific routes or different styles of back shoulders and deep routes. But I think ultimately the defense of Clemson played pretty well. But I would say Virginia Tech's defense was a shade better. You take 2 drives away, and this is Virginia Tech's football game. I think the Clemson Tigers asserted themselves on those 2 drives that started the second half, and they were not going to be denied. As I said, Klubnik, very underwhelming, even though he had 3 touchdowns. But then Phil Maffa, once again, fills the void. Number 23, Clemson survives at Blacksburg. Number 21, Washington State 49, Utah State 28, as the independent, or still affiliated with the defunct Pac-12, 8-1, 5-0, but they're considered independent. But here's the storyline. This game was never in any threat. Washington State's never been in any threat. I looked at the stats of this game, and it's just like, oh man, Washington State was like, why did you even come into Pullman? 28-21 in first downs. This is Mr. CeeLo's formula. 482 to 395. Impressive by Utah State. The passing, Utah State was better. The rushing, it was 303. This is a switch for the Cougars. 2 turnovers for Utah State. And, of course, Wazoo wins the time of possession, which we always say, you guys, if you cannot win Mr. CeeLo's formula, there's generally no chance that you're going to win the football game. So let's look at what we had in the statistical category as Washawn Parker had 149 yards on the ground with 2 touchdowns, had a 75-yard score on 11 carries. John Mateer continues to impress, 18 of 24, 179, 4 touchdown passes. He dispersed the ball rather evenly. Kyle Williams had 5 grabs for 55 yards and 3 touchdowns. And honorable mentions for the Utah State. Spencer Petras was 28 of 45, 208 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Jordan Vincent of Utah State had 11 tackles. Impressive. But number 21, Wazoo, 49. Utah State, 28. Number 20, Colorado, 41. Texas Tech, 27. Now, first of all, I'm not an opponent of a team getting in and they've lost 2 games. Don't think I'm all about that. But there are several 2-loss teams that are better than Colorado. Because Colorado, this is the most impressive win they've got on their resume. Yeah, this is the most impressive resume. And people can call me hating if you want to. But the reality of it is they've beaten nobody. Nobody of consequence. But now, before we get started, I can prove it to you. Okay, you beat North Dakota State, a AA school. You squeak by them in your building. Yes, you squeak by them. You're supposed to win that game. More convincingly. Colorado State, good win. Baylor, you needed a Hail Mary. But let's not forget, you got drubbed by Nebraska, whom is now a 4-loss team. Central Florida, impressive win. K-State, you lost by a field goal in your building. Arizona, convincing win. Cincinnati, somewhat convincing. You got Utah, Kansas, and Oklahoma State remaining. Now, it's going to be interesting to see the Kansas game because they were a team that I picked to be very good. But let's look at the Colorado game in its totality because Texas Tech did everything but hand this game to the Buffaloes. People are going to say, oh, he hating. No. You can't hate on something that is not worth hating on. Sorry, you call me a hater if you want to, but you can't hate on something that's not worth hating on. The only guy that you have... Listen, Travis Hunter's a good player, but all of this attention against inferior talent, and I'm not calling these teams inferior, I'm saying based on the bigger stage and the bigger picture, how does he stack up? And nobody's asking that question. Same thing with Shedeur Sanders. He was 30 of 43 for 291 and 3 touchdowns. Impressive, but this is Texas Tech. Just saying. Baron Morton was 24 of 40. 275, 2 scores, and interception. But let's go back to what I was talking about earlier. Texas Tech's Mr. C. How does Texas Tech's stats on Saturday match up to Mr. CeeLo's formula for the upset? Well, let's see. Texas Tech had 2 more first downs. They had 37 more yards of offense. And almost outpassed the Colorado Buffaloes. Here's an impressive feat. The Buffaloes actually were over 50 yards rushing, but Texas Tech outran them almost twice. They had 113 yards on the ground. Yet, Texas Tech lost one of the most important battles of the whole thing, of the whole formula. Turnovers. They had the ball 30 minutes. The Red Raiders lost that turnover battle, and it killed them. Because, honestly, one of the plays that put this game out of reach was a scoop and score. Controversial, but I would venture to say that it was what it was. You're looking at a Texas Tech team that had several opportunities to get inside. Well, they had several opportunities to score points. They weren't red zone, but you have to score when you get an opportunity. They held this football team, and the offense went dead for Texas Tech. Meanwhile, it was almost, like I said, Colorado, even if it takes time for it to wake up, you're not going to have this opportunity against formidable foes. Because you were in a 13-0 hole when you got the ball back with about 10 minutes left in the second quarter and when you got on the board. And then you get the ball back and you get a field goal. I will say this, what's impressive is that the Colorado Buffaloes were able to score on their next 5 possessions, which allowed them not only to get ahead in this game, but seal the momentum. Because if you look, you got a turnover on downs mixed in with, okay, once you had that turnover on downs, you had touchdowns in between. You actually had 2 turnover on downs. You had 2 turnover on downs and an interception and a fumble and another turnover on downs before they scored again. So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking to myself, in between all of that, you had 2 touchdowns, but then you had a field goal, a punt, and a punt. And the score of this game was 34-27. Very fortunate, Colorado. Nonetheless, you got the win. I will say, nonetheless, you got the win. It's going to be interesting to see if they can finish up and get in to the Big 12 playoff, the Big 12 championship game and face off with one of 2 teams. Whether it be the BYU Cougars or the Iowa State Cyclones or the Kansas State Wildcats. Now keep in mind, all of these teams have 2 losses. Even the West Virginia Mountaineers are 4-2. Arizona State's 4-2. So you got a bunch of teams that are at 2 losses. So, right now, Colorado better not lose. If they lose, more than likely, if it's somebody like the Cyclones are back in that spot. And BYU definitely wants to continue to win out, knowing that they have a date coming up in the Big 12 title game. Technically, if they can win, more than likely win the next 2 games, they're in. They've got they got Kansas, and then they have ASU, which is not a pushover. They're looking for that huge spot as well. But Colorado 41, Texas Tech 27. Virginia upsets Pitt 24-19. The number 18 Pitt Panthers, and I think if you guys remember the show, I told you guys I did not think that the Pittsburgh Panthers could score enough points. I felt like this was a team that had enough on the defensive side. I felt like it was a really good defensive unit. I just didn't think that this team had enough points. They could score enough points. Well, let's see if Virginia fits Mr. CeeLo's formula for the upset. Virginia 19 first downs, 17 for Pittsburgh. They had almost 50 yards more total yards than the Pitt Panthers. And not to mention, you look at the turnovers, they were even. Time of possession, ladies and gentlemen, 35 minutes to 24 in favor of the Virginia Cavaliers. So, once again, Mr. CeeLo's formula for the upset prevails yet again. But let's not pretend that this was a game that Virginia just absolutely dominated, because they didn't. Virginia was making mistakes all over the field. Especially to start this game. And needless to say, Pitt just couldn't get anything done. The first 3 drives were just 3 plays and out, 5 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, and then they finally get on the board. And honestly, once they got on the board and tied this up, and then the very next drive, Virginia throws an interception. Man, I was all over this. I thought, okay, Pittsburgh's going to stop fooling around. They're going to take this game and run out of the building with it. Because after the interception, Pitt was only able to get a field goal. And they were just outside the red zone when they started. And then you see a punt by Virginia. And then right there before the half, Pitt's able to get a field goal. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe this has done settled it down. I even got to thinking, okay, Pittsburgh's going to run away with this thing. So you get 3 drives. Virginia gets the ball first to start the second half. They go 3 and out. Then it's just an exchange of 3 and outs for 2 possessions for Virginia, and then the third from there. And then Pitt actually has an 8-play drive, 3 minutes, and they miss a field goal, which allows the Virginia Cavaliers to go down the field in 5 plays. The minute 59, capped off by Anthony Calandra's pass to Xavier Brown for 24 yards and a score. But the play was Calandria's 29-yard run from the other side of the 50 all the way down to the Pittsburgh 24. As I said, it put Virginia on top. And then on the very next drive, there's an interception that leads to another Virginia touchdown. And this is pretty much where we stayed for a while, 21-13. And then later on in the fourth quarter, to start the fourth quarter, Pitt gets all the way down inside the Virginia 10-yard line, and they're able to get in and unable to get the 2-point conversion. If you're Pitt, that field goal, you wouldn't have to have gone for 2 there if you make the field goal. So that's why it's so important to me when I look back at games like this as a top. If you want to be a top program in this country, in the college football era, you have to have a kicker on roster that can make kicks consistently. I'm not saying he missed a whole lot of field goals, but that's just like Virginia. Virginia had a chance to put this game away before Pittsburgh got the ball back to win the game. You could have argued that this game could have cost Virginia because all they needed was a touchdown to win the game. And granted, Pittsburgh never threatened to get that touchdown, but you get that field goal, you not only force Pitt to get a touchdown, but you also forced them to go for 2, which they were unable to do in the earlier parts of the game. So, as I've said, there's been many games this past weekend, where kickers could have been extremely vital for their team's survival in this week's games. But Pitt falls 24-19. Excellent game by Virginia. As I said, I was just more concerned with Pitt's defense being able to create scoring opportunities for their offense, because their offense is not good. And as I said, this was not one of those games. This is one of those games you would choose to forget. Now, I want you guys to go back, watch my show, and I want you to tell me, Mr. CeeLo, you are the man. I know, Brad. I know. Listen, when you know, you know. But I told you, this is what Kansas should have looked like all year. But I will say this. When you get it all together in every phase of the game, this is what it's supposed to look like for Kansas this year. Kansas 45, number 17, Iowa State 36, as they fall the second week in a row after starting the season at 7-0. But of course, this game was in Jayhawks building. But let's go ahead and put Mr. CeeLo's formula to the test. Kansas 25-23 on first downs. Total yardage, Kansas 532 to 461. Turnovers, Kansas had none. I think that's the first time all year Kansas did not have any turnovers. In the time of possession, Kansas won that one. Sweep. They totally swept the most important categories that you needed to in order to achieve Mr. CeeLo's formula for the upset, which is why they did. Now, I will say this. There was a pick six in this game that put the game away. Melo Dotson's pick six, which you've probably seen all over top plays of the week, sealing this victory for the Kansas Jayhawks, which, as I've said many times before, now I know a lot of people are going to say, well, it wasn't at the end of the game. They had a chance to win the game. Well, not really. Once they scored that, Rocco Beck hit Higgins for that touchdown, and they got the 2-point conversion. I mean, we all knew it was pretty much a done deal there. 45-28 is it's a 3-possession game. We knew what was what. They just did some window dressing or some cosmetic scoring, if you will. Kansas played their butts off. This is the team I expected to see come out the entire beginning of the year. If you guys watch my show, I said that I thought very highly of Jalen Daniels, and this is why. Let's look at what he did. Daniels had 68 yards on the ground. He was 12 of 24, 295, and 2 touchdowns. Now, I know you're going to look at that and say, that's blah. But the thing is, he had over 350 yards total offense. Then we look at Rocco Becht, who had 383, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. And he was not as, even though he had almost 40 yards passing, he wasn't his fluid self as he normally is. He had the interception, and when you have turnovers, this is the huge thing. When you have a turnover and you get situations where you're not really gelling, and I'm not saying that they're not gelling, but there was just times it felt like Iowa State was just not themselves. And Kansas just had it together today. You had Quentin Skinner had 4 grabs for 135 yards and a touchdown, including a 60-yarder. Luke Grime had a 70 yarder and a touchdown. Their defense made plays, and I'm talking about Kansas's. Iowa State's defense did not play up to their standards, not as well as they normally do. Iowa State's offense, even though they scored 36 points in this game, you could argue they didn't play their best game. And it almost looked like it took both teams, both the sides of the ball, time for them to wake up. And it was, by that time, it seemed like it was too late because Kansas had 31 points at the half. 31. And they scored 16. Iowa State scored 16 in the fourth quarter. Excuse me. They scored 23 in the second half. But by that time, by the time they started slowing down Kansas, the game was out of hand. But as you see, Iowa State's dream season is almost in shambles. They're going to have to win out and hope to get some help and get back into this Big 12 fight. But Kansas pretty much slammed the door shut on any hopes that the Iowa State Cyclones had of hopefully getting into the Big 12 playoff, because they still have rival Kansas State, one of their top-notch big-time programs to finish up with. So that's going to be one of those games that's going to be a decider if you think about it. It's going to be like a knockout match, a knockout game for each one of those teams. And everybody who is like me and like Brad, that is a fan of Ashton Jeanty. This kid, I got to watch him, and I'm going to tell you something. I love how smooth this guy runs. He is awesome. But I'm going to say this. Boise State's got a pretty good defense, and Nevada's not a very good offensive team. So I'm just going to say either Boise State was semi-looking ahead, or Nevada had some tricks up their sleeve, and they were trying to compete and actually show what they were made of. Now, that's not going to look like that in the stat column, I'm afraid. But when you watch Boise State, they either score quickly on you or they take their time. Now, I will say this. The turnovers were a huge difference in this game. To me, Nevada just did not make enough plays. You look at the way they had their opportunities, and they just did not take advantage of them. They took advantage of the Boise State fumble, but they did not take advantage of the interception. They turned around and they fumbled it, and then they turned around and they fumbled it back, which in retrospect, you could say they did take advantage of it, but they still didn't. You cannot turn the football over when a team gives you the opportunity. You have to make sure you take advantage of it if you're Nevada. And Nevada did not do that. And when you looking at I always bring this up, Mr. CeeLo's formula for the upset, overwhelming wins for the Boise State Broncos. 21-13 in first downs, 393 to 319 in total yardage, which was impressive that Nevada outgained Boise State in the passing game by over 100 yards. Then you look at the penalties, it was even. But then the time of possession, Boise State wins by 3 minutes. So when you look at it, you got Boise State Nevada, nope. You got turnovers, even. Then you got yards gained, total yards gained. Boise State, they won absolutely none of these categories. But yet they kept it close. So, Boise, better get it together. I will say, Nevada had a good run, but they just did not capitalize. When you see a team make these mistakes, you have to capitalize. Every single one of them, you have to capitalize. Our man, Ashton Jeanty, 34 carries, 209, 3 more touchdowns. And that's all. Ashton Jeanty continuing to march towards that Heisman Trophy. Number 12, Boise, 28. Nevada, 21. Number 11, Alabama, 42. Number 15, LSU, 13. Dude, let me tell you something. Alabama don't need to jump all the way up there, but LSU needs to fall right out of the top 25. I don't want to hear what anybody got to say. You don't get your butt whooped like that at home. You don't. And I don't want to hear anybody say, Alabama's just that good. No, they ain't. You got 2 losses on your resume. Don't give me that. Don't give me that. Don't give me that. Because the truth of the matter is, LSU has shown us who they are. And like they always say, when somebody shows you who they are, believe them. Believe them. I'm just going to look at the team stats, and then we're going to get off this game. This don't even make no sense for you to get your butt smacked this bad. Jalen Milroe was 12 of 18, 109 yards throwing the ball, but he had 185 yards rushing and 4 touchdowns and had a 72-yarder. You had a Jaden Daniels last year that showed you how you needed to defend the scrambling quarterback. What'd you learn? Nothing? Kyron Layson had 5 grabs, 79 yards, and a touchdown. Ryan Williams, my man, had only 2 grabs for 29 yards. And I mean, really, you cannot let this guy beat you running the football. You cannot. I don't care who you are. You can't let this guy just run it up all over the place on you. That's why I said, no, you got to go, LSU. You got to go. You ain't rolling up in here like that. You ain't got it like that.
It's official. You suck.
And, I mean, when you look at the statistics of this game, look how close these are. First downs, 23-22. Total yards, 421, 343. But you know what those numbers are that are really huge to me? Look at the rushing, 312 to 104. And then the 3 turnovers. Then you lose the time of possession. You lost everything. And this game ain't supposed to be this wide of a margin in Death Valley. Oh, yeah, Death Valley is the place where dreams come to die. Because your dream show just died. Number 11, Alabama 42. Number 15, LSU 13. Number 10, Notre Dame 52. Florida State 3. Now, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on here because if you guys want to check out my full tutorial on this, go to Talk Like a Champion and check. That's my all-access Notre Dame channel. Notre Dame showed their hand early. They went up 21-0, put on 10 in the third, 21 in the fourth quarter. Riley Leonard, still not where he needs to be as a passer. 215 yards and a touchdown. Jadarian Price finally got back on track after a couple of weeks where he was not touching the football. 7 carries, 95 yards, and a 65-yard touchdown. Leonard also had 70 on the ground, 2 touchdowns. But you look at this Florida State offense. Lawrence Toafili had 77 yards on the ground, so you got something to build on. The quarterback position is just absolutely a horrible scenario right now for Florida State. They just don't have one. And DJ Uiagalelei, who did not play in this game, had a broken finger, and that was something that I did not know. I thought he was just sat because he was just playing so poorly. But yeah, they really have some issues on that side of the football, and Notre Dame just took advantage of it. Guys like Donovan Hinish had 2 sacks. Riley Mills was in the backfield all day. He had 3 sacks. And guys like Jalen Seed and Junior Tui Alamaka had a sack apiece. Alsbury and Young had a half sack. So the Notre Dame defense not only was smoldering, but they were just absolutely shut down in this game. And you saw Jordan Clark get an interception. Also, Luke Tolich had a pick 6 that went 79 yards for a touchdown. So Notre Dame seems to be in full swing right now. The only issue that they're having right now is the quarterback position. If they can get that situated, this has got to be one of the scariest teams in all of college football. But as I said, go to my show, Talk Like a Champion, if you want to see my full tutorial on the Notre Dame victory over the Florida State Seminoles 52-3. Number 9, BYU 22, Utah 21. Now, I must say, when I first hear this, I did not see this game called that horribly. So, in theory, I must say, Ken Whittingham, I am disappointed in the way you conducted yourself. There were some questionable calls. But here's the reality. You've been there and you've done that. You understood. You understood what it's like to be the hunted. A lot of times what's going to happen is you're going to be the benefit of some bad calls. Sometimes you get to be the unfortunate one of bad calls. It's just the nature of the beast. It didn't seem, a lot of times it didn't seem blatant. But let's look at it. You had a 0-0 score. Then you had an interception that led to a BYU field goal. Then you came back down. You had 64 yards for a touchdown. Then you gave up a touchdown. Then you come back, took the lead 14-10, and then they went for it on downs. Then you went up 21-0. Punt, interception that set up a field goal, and then you had a 9-play, 36-yard drive, which, like I said, there were a couple of questionable calls, but then you had it punt out of bounds. You had them pinned 95 yards. And then they go down the field and they score on you with 12:35 left. Then you punt, and then they kick the field goal to win the game. They got the ball back, and with 2 minutes left, you proceeded to do nothing the rest of the game. Seriously, dude. You can't get mad at anybody but yourself. And look, why are you worried about winning this game anyway? When Cam Rising was done, you should have known right then and there. You can't sit there and believe that, oh, the guys I got playing. Listen, I'm never going to sit here and say you're a terrible team. But Cam Rising was the guy that made this team go. And there's a lot of people that are saying you need to move away from him. Me, personally, I get it. I understand why you want to move away, because ultimately you might need to. But your quarterback position is not looking good, Whittingham. 12 of 21, 112 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. You can't run the football. Rose had 55 yards rushing, but he's your quarterback. You did get Bernard for 78, but the other thing is you didn't score when you needed to. BYU gave you plenty of opportunities to win this game. But then you didn't help yourself. Let's look at the tail of the tape. You were 6 of 12 on third downs. I will admit you had some penalties, but here's the thing. You had 90 yards on those penalties. They had 67 on 10 penalties. Y'all both had the same number of penalties, but you had 3 turnovers. 3 turnovers. How you going to sit there and look at somebody and say, I got screwed? You won the time of possession by 20 seconds. You lost total yards by almost 100. How you expect to beat somebody when the other team gets 5 more first downs, you get outgained by over 80 yards, and then you got 3 turnovers? And only one you win, only one of Mr. C. Malo's formula for the upset you won was the time of possession. Come on, Ken. You've been a winner before. This ain't how you do it. This ain't how you do it. But BYU goes to 9-0. BYU goes to 9-0 for the first time since 2020, the COVID season. Now we have the number 8 Indiana 20, Michigan 15, as the Wolverines fall to 500, excuse me. Well, looking at this game, the first thing I would like to get off my chest is that Michigan had opportunities. I mean, you look at this game and they just could not get it going. Indiana, this looks like a game that was reversed about 5 years ago. What Michigan did in this game is the exact same thing that an Indiana team that was not very good would do. They would make a mistake. Indiana would make a mistake. Michigan would make a mistake. Then Indiana would take advantage. And the game ended up 17-3 at the half. But even as poorly as the Michigan Wolverines have played, they still put themselves in a position to win this football game. You get an Indiana interception, Michigan kicks a field goal. Michigan, after an Indiana punt, kicks a field goal, 17-9. Then after another Indiana punt, Michigan scores a touchdown, 17-15. Then it proceeds to be punt, 3 and out for Michigan, 6-play field goal for the Indiana Hoosiers to go up 20-15. And then when you get the ball back with 2:34, you see so much of the subpar quarterback play in the 2-minute drill. Just really bad reads and just bad calls. I mean, there's a combination of both. Bad calls and bad reads by the quarterbacks. And you cannot have that if you are going to be an elite program. A lot of these programs, what they're missing is a quarterback. And you look at what Michigan had in the last part of this game, and even Indiana, this is going to It's impressive that Indiana was able to hold Michigan off, but then you have to also understand that they get up against Ohio State. This is not going to happen. They're not going to be able to be as fortunate to get this done. But let's look at Mr. CeeLo's formula. First downs, Michigan had the advantage there. You look at total yards, Indiana by 40 yards even. Then you look at the turnovers. Each team had one. Michigan won the possession battle. So a lot of people are going to say, well, no, you got to win. You got to win at least two of the three, or I would even say that three of the four. They didn't win any of them except the first downs, and the first downs are a big part of it, but they're not a telltale sign. Total yardage, turnovers, and time of possession. Those will get you the win majority of the time. But as I said, Indiana is showing why they are who they are, and they're getting impressive vote of confidence from everyone because they're able to get these ugly wins out. Granted, it wasn't home, but Indiana does improve to 10-0 for the first time in school history. Everything after this is a first for the Indiana Hoosiers. We're not talking about the basketball team. Football. Because they've been 10-0 in basketball, just to let y'all know. Who cares? Curtis Rourke was 17 of 28, 206, 2 touchdowns and interception. And this was a very defensive-oriented football game. And as I said, this is what you want, a slobber knocker of a game. 4 sacks for the Wolverines, no sacks for the Indiana Hoosiers. But that interception turned out to be, a pretty big deal. You can't have You cannot have turnovers when you're the underdog. You just cannot. You have to be the one that's creating turnovers. And I know it was 1-1, but you cannot have a turnover when you're coming in. It could be the difference in a game, especially if it's a game of limited possessions. And this is a game I'm pretty sure Brad is going to be extremely interested in. Not much to tell about this game. Number 7, Tennessee 33, Mississippi State 14, as Tennessee just pretty much puts the finishing touches on a game that was 20-7. It was not fast-paced, but it was light. As, Mississippi State, they try to run the football. Devon Booth had 125 yards on the ground. Should be a sign for the Dogs come next week.
Run.
What I've been saying the whole time. Brad, you already know.
Run.
Nico Iamaleava, 8 of 13. Guys, listen. Everybody has this notion that Tennessee is a passing offense. Iamaleava had 13 attempts, but he had 174 yards, 2 scores. Yup. Dante Thornton Jr. had 3 grabs for 104 and a score, 73-yarder. Squirrel White, 3 grabs, 63 and a score. But Dylan Sampson, probably the only guy not named Ashton Jante that's known for, but he's not known. Everybody knows Ashton Jante, but this is a guy that's right there behind Jante as far as touchdown rushes. I think Jante's got 23, and Dylan Sampson just added to his total as he has 20 on the year.
Run.
He's got 20, guys. But he's not getting the same Heisman love as Ashton Jante. But, this is going to be a fun matchup. And, we're going to talk about this in a couple of weeks. But Tennessee also had 4 sacks of Mississippi State quarterback Michael Van Buren Jr. So, it's going to be interesting checking this one out come Saturday, you guys. This is going to be a matchup to check and see which one of these teams. And it's probably a knockout game as well, you guys. This is going to be a game. And I'm not listening to Heather Dinich talk about I would hesitate to eliminate a 3-loss SEC team. Who cares? You're supposed to win. You want to be the best, beat the best. All the best ain't in the SEC. That's just like LSU. Ain't the best. If Georgia loses this weekend in Tennessee, they obviously ain't the best. Sorry, Brad. Lose Tennessee, you don't deserve to go.
What?
You don't deserve to go. You got this game in Athens. Moving on to another sleeper, as Penn State just absolutely opened up the beatdown on Washington. Look, they didn't have a single guy go over 50 yards. Other than Desmond Williams, the quarterback, he passed for over 50 yards. And Will Rogers was 10 of 13 for 59 yards and threw a pick. Drew Aller was 20 for 28, 220 yards and a touchdown. But you had Katron Allen had 98 yards rushing and a touchdown. Corey Smith had 95 yards rushing for the Penn State Nittany Lions. And as a team, the Nittany Lions rushed for over 266 yards. Meanwhile, they had 5 sacks on the day. Meanwhile, the Huskies were unable to get any. And this is a different Washington team from last year. This is a 5-5 football team that is 3-4 in its debut in the Big Ten. So we can look at Caleb DeBoer and say maybe he had some to do with that. And now that Alabama's starting to come out of its hibernation, maybe we could say that. Or maybe LSU was just that bad.
You can't handle the truth.
Penn State 35, Washington 6. I don't like picking at Florida because they had the most brutal schedule I've ever seen in history of a team that is supposed to have some kind of competition. We've seen some cupcake teams that have had some brutal schedules because they're just, they're supposed to have them. Number 5, Texas, 49, Florida 17. This game was over at halftime. It was 35-0 at the half. And unfortunately, there's not much you can say, except that Jacoby Jackson for the Gators had 116 yards on the ground. Jaden Ball had 88 yards. So there's some plus there with the Gators. They can run the football. However, they can't run it well enough to get guys in situations where they can score. Yet Shamir Dyke had 95 yards receiving on 5 catches. But unfortunately, like I said, Aiden Warner had 2 interceptions in this game. And it seemed like every time the Gators had some kind of momentum, that it just, the Longhorns turned them away. And that Austin crowd just got to them. But on the flip side, Jarrett Gibson had 100 yards rushing. Jaden Blue had 60. Isaiah Bond had a 44-yarder. And Quinn Ewers didn't take off at all, which is a problem. We're not used to seeing Quinn Ewers not throw it. He's become more of a traditional pocket passer. And to me, where he's at his best is he's moving around. Don't know if that's some of Sark's coaching, but yeah, I'm used to seeing Quinn Ewers moving. But anyway, he went 19 of 27, 333 yards, 5 touchdowns, en route to the 49-17 win. And it's good to see the Longhorns getting back to running the football, but it's still not traditional Longhorn smash you up. But in any case, Texas gets the win and inches closer to possibly getting that SEC title matchup. Probably the upset of the weekend. Number 4, Miami falls to Georgia Tech in Atlanta, 28-23. There's a lot of people cheering this on because they want to get their favorite team in there. To me, I'm going to go ahead and say it. This doesn't mean Miami's done. They still got the best player in the country. Well, you going to argue that with me? Cam Ward is the best player in the country. I don't care how you feel about it. Despite how bad this Georgia Tech defense played and how at moments even Cam Ward looked bad. I mean, he was 25 of 39, 348 yards. He had 3 touchdowns and had several opportunities to be picked off. Now, this is what I didn't understand. Haynes King and Aaron Follow threw the ball a combined 16 times for 99 yards and 2 touchdowns. Their longest completion was to Bailey Stockton for 27 yards. They ran the ball for a combined 48 times for 271 yards. Haynes King had 93 on 20 carries. This is a dude that's supposed to have a banged up shoulder. Jamal Haynes had 3 carries, 83 yards, including a 65-yarder that went for 6. Ain't no way. If I know this team is throwing the football, look, you got to show me you can beat me throwing it. To me, they did not show me. And as we get ready to go through Mr. CeeLo's formula for the upset, let us do it. Total yards, 436 to 370. That'd be Miami. Then we go to the turnovers. Miami had a turnover. Georgia Tech, check. Possession, Georgia Tech, 34-50 to 25. And the winner would be Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech won 2 out of those 3. And to me, the most important ones are the turnover and the possession battle. You can look at this game from top to bottom and tell that Georgia Tech had it figured out because it took Miami a minute to get going. Now, they did score 10 points to start this game, but then Georgia Tech just kind of methodically settled in. And then before you knew it, Tech hit them with another touchdown. And ultimately, what I thought was a huge mistake was that Miami had a situation where they had gotten inside the Georgia Tech territory, and they had a bad play call. You didn't give Georgia Tech anything to look at. It was almost like they were saying, "Oh well, we're gonna get you like this. We're gonna make you read." And then there was a huge play on 4th and 6, and there was a holding penalty that got converted. So, if I recall right, it was a touchdown. Yeah. There was a huge touchdown that got called back for holding. Now, am I going to say that there was some home cooking there?
You don't have to answer that question.
It was a toss-up play. On some Saturdays, it could have been a hold, and then on some Saturdays, it wouldn't be. I'm not trying to take anything away from Georgia Tech. I thought it would have been a call that was... it could have went either way. But it got called. It got killed back. They went for it on 4th and 16. It turned out to cost them. Because if they kicked the field goal there, guess what? You're only down 2. And instead of kicking it, you go for 2. You go for 2 there. And then, of course, the fumble. Gab out to my man, Romello Height. Hometown boy, Romello Height. Got the strip sack. And, yeah, he don't even get the props here in the scorecard. All they gave was Jordan Vandenberg the recovery. But they didn't give my man, hometown boy, Romello, the props he deserved. But ultimately, it was a big win for them. You know, I knew as soon as they gave Notre Dame the trouble that they gave them, and as soon as they got the win over Florida State, this Georgia Tech team was on the verge of doing something. But the reality of it is Haynes King is not the quarterback. I think they need to move on from him. I think he needs to be a gadget guy. He's not going to be a quarterback. His quarterback play is sus at the very best. Big win. The question is, where does Miami go from here? I still think Cam Ward is the best player in college football. Georgia Tech's going to continue to scare people. Do I think they can make some noise against Georgia? Sure. Georgia doesn't fix their attitude as far as being able to stop the running quarterback and stop throwing the football all over the field or attempting to. Which leads me to Ole Miss 28. Number 16, Ole Miss 28. Number 3, Georgia 10. Now, you can have your questions and doubts as to why Georgia lost this football game, but I can tell you an ultimate reason why. Let us look at the tail of the tape, shall we? Ole Miss 19-16 on the first downs. Ole Miss 396. Georgia 246.
You want answers? I want the truth.
Ole Miss, this is something I got to show y'all. Ole Miss 133-60. What yards do y'all think those are?
Run.
That's right. Rushing yards. And not to mention 3, count them, 3 big old ugly turnovers by the Dogs to 1 for Ole Miss. And then you outgained. You had the football for 32 and a half minutes almost. But you lost the 2 big ones. Total yards, turnovers. But then here's the thing. For you to lose by 3 possessions, not good. Especially, now I will say this. Do I think this is a game that you could honestly say Georgia looked ahead?
Why don't you explain it to me?
I don't know. I mean, it's possible. I mean, let's look at it and say, being that Ole Miss lost to Kentucky and lost to LSU, I don't see why you would overlook a team that lost at Baton Rouge and lost at home to Kentucky. I get it. I mean, I really don't get it now that I mention it. Kirby. Brad, I'd be at Kirby. Brad, I'd be at Kirby. If he always running his mouth talking about they trying to take it from us, and then you come out here and you do this. See, the problem is, I'm going to say it just like this. Y'all Georgia fans don't hold y'all's coach accountable. Y'all so quick to hold Bobo accountable. Listen, the offense didn't give up 28 points. And the last I checked on this game, I want y'all to follow me closely now. Let's look at the play. Ole Miss had a pick. Georgia scored a touchdown off of it. Then Ole Miss came right back with Austin Simmons. Boy, I hate to see what Simmons would have did to y'all if he had played the rest of this game. He put that thing on y'all. And I'm going to be honest with you, he changed the course of this game. Because then y'all turned around, y'all went 3-and-out. Then they came down the field and they kicked the field goal. You kicked again. Then they drove the ball down the field, kicked another field goal. Then you went 9 plays, punted. They kicked another field goal. Before you know it, they up 16-7. Yeah, I'm talking a little country. Punt, 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 punt. Then you came out the second half and you had a 9-play, 70-yard drive and got all the way inside the Ole Miss 10 and stalled. But this is what you did. After you got there, incomplete pass, Nate Frazier on the run, pass complete to Cash Jones for a yard. You Georgia, why you throw the ball 2 out of 3 times that you inside the 10-yard line? Then Ole Miss proceeds to go down there and score a touchdown, 22-10. Then you put the ball on the ground. That hurts you because now you get the ball moved back 19 yards, flip the field position. Then you go 15 plays, drive all the way down inside the Ole Miss 30, and you done burned up almost 10 minutes of clock all the way into the 7-minute mark, and you throw an interception. Yeah. Basically, you turned the ball over 3 times, and they don't count turnover on downs as a turnover, but it is. You turned it over with a fumble and an interception, and then you turned it over on downs to end the game. Yeah. Great job, Kirby. Let's check out the box score, because it's not that impressive when you look at Ole Miss's eye of the view. Carson Beck, 20 of 31, 186, the interception. Once again, Georgia did not have a running back that topped 50 yards. Not a one. Jackson Dart was the leading rusher for the Ole Miss Rebels. Jackson Dart had 199 yards passing, a touchdown on 13 of 22. Austin Simmons, though, 5 of 6, 64 yards, including that first touchdown drive that he
Run.
Ulysses Bentley had that touchdown run on that first drive. But as I said, this was a game that Ole Miss had to have or they knew they were done. Am I still a non-believer in Lane Kiffin? Yeah. You won this game at home. Even though it was a convincing win, you won at home. You got to do it on the road too. You got to be consistent with it. And finally, the last two. Number 2, Ohio State 45, Purdue 0. As we look at Will Howard had 260 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Travion Henderson, 6 carries, 85 yards, a touchdown. Keyshawn Judkins had 32 yards on 11 carries. Jeremiah Smith broke a record, I'm wanting to say as a freshman record that was held by Chris Carter. I think it's for most receiving yards. Or was it receiving touchdowns? I think it was receiving touchdowns. He had 687 and 1. But the story of this game, Hudson Card's a guy we saw earlier this year. Ohio State's really taking this loss to Oregon personally, and they're showing the world that they're ready for that rematch that is looking like it's going to be inevitable. As well as Oregon, who continues to handle their business as they were up 21-10 at the half against Maryland. They finally closed out Maryland 39-18 and go to 10-0 once again as they are continuing to move. As Dylan Gabriel was not a large portion. He added 3 more touchdowns to his Heisman campaign. Billy Edwards was 22 of 44, 206, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Ultimately, Oregon's just going to have to continue to win, get themselves in a good place where they can get their starters out of there and continue to stake their campaign as the number 1 team in the country so that they can establish themselves in the rematch of more than likely the 2 best teams arguably in college football. But let us go down to the rankings where we are going to go down as we look at the top 25 as the Tulane Green Wave enter the top 25 at 8-2. The Missouri Tigers are entering at 7-2. The South Carolina Gamecocks jump right back in at 6-3. Louisville moves up 3 spaces to number 22. LSU drops 7. Boo. To number 21. K-State moves up 2 to number 20. Wazoo moves up 1 to number 19. Colorado moves up 3 to number 18. Boo. Clemson moves up 2 to number 17. Army jumps up 2 at number 16. Texas A&M stays put at number 15. SMU drops 1. Boo. To number 14. Boise State drops 1. Boo. Number 13. Miami drops 8 to number 12. Even bigger boo. Georgia drops down 9 to number 11. Nah. Ole Miss moves up 6. Big time boo. Hell no. Alabama goes up 2 to number 9. Notre Dame goes up 2 to number 8. BYU goes up 2. Tennessee goes up 1 to 6. Indiana, the highest ranking it's ever seen, goes up to number 5, moves up 3. Finally getting some respect from the AP. Penn State moves up 2 and goes to 8-1. Texas moves up 2 to number 3 at 8-1. Ohio State moves up 1 to number 2. And Oregon moves up to Oregon stays put as the number 1 team in the country, receiving all 62 of the votes. But that's going to do it for us on this edition of Gridiron Gab Triple Option. Make sure if you have comments, leave them down in the comment section. As well as if you join the show and become a member of the Gridiron Gab Triple Option family, please let me know down in the comment section so we can officially add you to the family, as Brad has done several times. Also, if you have comments on the show, please leave them down there because this is all about conversation. Also, go to the Gridiron Gab Triple Option Facebook page and become a member there too, so you can keep up with all the other shenanigans that we may be involved in here at 2GTO. As well as go to my Instagram page at Mr. CeeLo if you just want to drop a line at me or check out the other things that I'm involved in. But until the next time, same Gab channel, same Gab platform.